Let's take this show on the road. Same-ish, different day. I'll be bored out my mind. Hometown, love my place.
Hey friends, let's dye some yarn. Today I am thinking that we shall dye some mohair. This is a 72% mohair and 28% mulberry silk that we're going to dye on. And I am going to soak it first in my plastic tub, and we're going to add some citric acid, which is what is used to make sure the dye adheres to the yarn, that it sticks to the yarn. So let's start with that. There we go. I'm going to put about half a tablespoon in there. So, and I'm adding, since I've only got 2 skeins today, I'm adding 2 liters of water. There we go. And we're going to put zip ties on the skeins to make it easier to pick them up from the water without them getting entangled in themselves and in each other. I'm shaking it loose a little bit. So, and we're adding a zip tie, like so. And we're going to do the same thing with the other one. Just shaking it loose a little bit. And we're adding a zip tie. There we go. Next, we are just going to pop our skeins into the tub. And I'm just pushing it down into the water. And we're going to let the yarn soak for at least half an hour to make sure it's all wet, so that the dye will attach. If there's dry patches of yarn, the dye will not stick to it. There we go. And we're just gonna let it sit until it's fully soaked, and then we can start dyeing. Now our mohair is ready to be dyed. It has been soaking for a couple of hours. And since I only have 2 skeins, I'm going to use my small pan. And we have 1.5 liters of water. I'm going to start with that. We'll see how far that gets us. I may add a little bit more. We got citric acid that we're going to add in to make sure that the dye sticks to the yarn. You need citric acid, you need a dye, and you need heat to do that. I got an old yogurt tub that I put some water in so that I can put my spoons in as I've used them. We got a big spoon to stir with, some small ones to grab the dye. Face mask to protect your airways. Should always wear one of these when you're working with a powder because it's very fine. You don't want that in your airways. And I got some gloves handy too. So the dyes we're working with today is Jacquard acid dyes in Chartreuse, and we also have it in sun yellow. We're going to use Dharma's frozen, and we're going to use pink from Colourcraft. So let's get ready to dye. I'm going to put that aside a little. And we're going to start with adding citric acid. I'm going to get a spoon for that. There we go. This is the only tool that I grab from my own kitchen. Otherwise, you should never use any tools from the kitchen for your dyeing. But this is only citric acid. So I grab a tablespoon of citric acid. We're going to set that aside. And we will add in the water. The next step, we are going to add the yarn into the dyeing pan. Alright, I'm gonna turn this so I can grab the zip ties. There we go. I'm just gonna squeeze out some of the excess water so I don't make a mess when I transfer it to the other pan. I'm just gonna put it in like a snake on the other screen. Side. I'm just coiling it into the pan, like so. I'm quite happy with the amount of water that we have here. I think that's just fine. And now we're ready to dye. Time to work in the dye. So first of all, put on your face mask to protect your airways. And I'm going to turn on the fan as well. Like so. And I'm actually going to turn on the plate right away. I'm going to start with the yellow one, because it's one of the lighter colors. I'm just going to grab one of the spoons. I'm not doing any measurements per se. I'm just having fun with it today. And sprinkling dye here and there. I'm going to grab the big spoon and push the dye into the yarn to make sure it dissolves properly. There we go. Next, I'm going to grab the frozen, which is a blue dye. So we grab a little bit of that. And I'm trying to avoid the yellow patches as much as I can, because it will turn green, of course. Here we are. Give that a little bit of a push too. Make sure it dissolves. I'm not going for speckles here, I just want a lot of different colors. Well, let's do some Chartreuse. This looks yellow more than anything. And this I can mix more with the yellow, because it's not going to turn into a different color. Just go lightly. Yeah. And again, we're going to push the green into the yarn as well. finally we're going to add a little bit of pink. This is a very pink color. I don't know if you can see this steam is starting to rise here, so I'm going to turn down the heat a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to cook the yarn again. Turning the pan a little bit. It's an old stove, so it heats unevenly. More. We're just gonna let that sit and let the dye penetrate the yarn for a bit. I can see over here I have some dye that has been mixed. So it is like a murky color. So we'll see what we end up with. And I'm moving the pan about to make sure it heats up everything. You need a combination of heat and citric acid and the acid dye to make sure that the dye sets in the yarn. And everything needs to be heated up. If you have cold patches, the dye won't stick there. It will disappear when you rinse the yarn. So you have to make sure that everything is hot. Okay, we're going to let that sit for a few minutes while it heats up. The yarns, the dyes have started to blend together a little bit. And I've been poking it gently to make sure everything is dyed. Just peeking underneath, making sure there are no white spots. Especially where the yarn is folded double, like here. Thinking this looks like a fairy kind of colorway. I don't know, what do you think? So just keep poking it, making sure we have dye everywhere and everything gets hot. And I usually just poke my fingers into the pan. It's very hot on that side, so I'm going to switch it over. Get some more heat on this side. There we go. pushing it around, making sure I get hot water everywhere. I'm going to give it a few more minutes to continue heating up and making sure everything is heated. Everything is starting to heat up properly now. We do not want it to boil though, we just want it to be warm. So that's what we need to make the dye set. And also, since I've had a lot of dye in this pot, it hasn't exhausted yet. And chances are it won't. So I'm just gonna settle as soon as I feel it's warm enough everywhere. I'm just gonna take it off the stove and let it cool. It will continue to exhaust while cooling as well, since the water is so hot. And it will exhaust as much as it can. It would be properly hot all over now. So we're going to turn off the heat. We're going to set it aside to cool completely before rinsing it. This is very important because it will felt if you don't. So we're going to set it aside, let it cool completely, and then we'll come back and we'll be rinsing it. Now the yarn has cooled off completely and we are ready to rinse it. So I'm going to start by adding cold water to my rinsing bowl. You can do it directly in the sink if you like, or use whatever you prefer. I'm also adding in a little bit of soap, which is my go-to for rinsing yarn. You do not need to use soap specifically. You can use shampoo, conditioner, dish soap, whatever you like. Just make sure to rinse it properly if you use something other than soap, because with soap you really only need to rinse once. I usually do twice, just to make sure, but once is actually enough. Like so. And I'm just picking up the yarn, squeezing out water just to not make a mess on the bench. There we go. And there's a slight hue of blue in here, something bluish, but it has exhausted really well. And we're just going to gently push it in the water. Don't want to agitate it too much to make a mess. I don't want it to tangle. And I'm grabbing the zip tie and just squeezing out the water. I don't wring it or twist it in any way, I'm just squeezing it. Also make sure you rinse the zip ties because sometimes there will be dye on those. And you want to get rid of that while rinsing. You don't get dye everywhere. there's a slight blue hue in the water, but most of it has exhausted. Adding some more water. And we're going to rinse it once more. There we go. And we're adding the skeins back in. And just tucking them in the water. And again, just not agitating too much to avoid the skeins from tangling. There we go. I'm going to dunk it again. And squeeze out the water. And the other one. Oh, let's see. There we go. There we are. This is the finished result after rinsing. Now we're going to dry it. I'll hang it on a clothing rack for a couple of days and we'll see what we get in the end. Here's the finished result of the mohair. As you can see, it kind of blends out a bit more when you're dyeing on this yarn compared to dyeing on superwash yarn. But I really love how this turned out. Both skeins. So please, if you do dye on mohair, let me know. Tag me with what you're dyeing. I would love to see it. So yeah, I'll see you in the next one.